Okay, a good Davach, everyone, on this beautiful Matzah Shabbos, following Shabbos Parashas Nasa, and we welcome in Saba and Aaron Swade, and Eddie Chazan, and Yitzi Muller, and Shimon Deer, and Mordechai Sultan, Irving Fishbaum, and Dr. Bruce Eisenberg. It's wonderful to have you. Mark Frankel, A.B. Spry is joining us. It's good to see A.B. Spry, Mel Zachter, Dr. Guy, and Stephen Holtzman, and that's is that Mordechai Sultan, Moshe Lehman, Abe Arbach, Ilya Shutman is coming on, and we welcome in Sandy Grunfeld, and Abba Steinhauser, David Helfgott on Kolaloshin, and here, holding the fort here in the shul, Berish Gesserman. We are dedicated by A.B. Spry with the very, very worthy tefillah that in the schus of our learning, a special extra schus should be that all children should be accepted into yeshivas with ease and without any heartache to the parents or any embarrassment to the child. Chaim Kramer is joining us now, and we are holding on this Motzei Shabbos ahead. We're on Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, and we are holding 9 lines from the top. 9 lines from the top. Should I tell them? Berish knows my secret. Saba knows my secret too. We are going to learn, Rabbi Isai, fasten your seatbelts. This is something that Mark has always dreamed for. We are going to learn 3 blat tonight.
Let's get a big cappuccino.
And the reason why we're learning 3 blat is because I am actually going to Philadelphia tomorrow night to the Adirei Torah Kinnis. My Rabbi Reb Ruvain is going, and I decided that since I'm a resident of Lakewood, I'm going to be a team player, and I really debated very, very long and hard with myself whether I should miss the shir and miss the Mishnah Yomis in my shul in order to do it, but I decided that being a resident of Lakewood, and I'm a beneficiary of all these thousands of boys learning here, so that I will participate in their honor and give kavod HaTorah. My going will be a schus for everyone. Tomorrow is a good night to make a date night with your wife. It's really a good night. You know, you have a Sunday night off, you know, you could do something. And if you are staying home, and you have access to YouTube, I put on 70 shiurim already on YouTube, and there are some very interesting shiurim. There's a hesped I gave for Ramila's 19th yahrzeit. There's a shir that I gave by Rav Label Katz's Siyum HaShas, the last Siyum HaShas of his life. I was the guest speaker there. That's very interesting. There's a shir that I gave life advice to seminary students. There's a lot of good shiurim there that you could tap into. There's also on one of my trips to Eretz Yisrael, I spoke at different kvarim, and I put those up on YouTube as well. So there's a host of material there that you might enjoy to look up my name and my YouTube channel. Of course, all these shiurim are also on TorahAnytime.com, but it might be hard to find them, while on the YouTube it might be much easier. Okay, let's get down to business over here. I did cut my sleep short, an hour and a half today, so to go it over well, that I should be able to present it to you quickly, so it shouldn't be a very long and hard night for everybody. Chaim Braun is joining us. Okay, so anyway, so the Mishnah said, if one witness said in front of me that the get was written, and two say that it was signed, it's kosher. Amar Rav Ami, Amar Rav Yochanan, lo yishanu ela shaget yotzi mitachas yad eid ksiva. It's only if the get comes from the hand of the one that says b'fanei nichtav. Because remember we said that the shliach is believed like two. That's the institution, that when he comes, he's believed like two. So if one says b'fanei nichtav and two say b'fanei nechtam, so therefore now you have two for each one, because since the shliach said in front of me it was written, so therefore you have two for the writing and two for the signing. Denasa kishnayim al zeh u kishnayim al zeh. Aval metachas yedei dichasima. But if the two, if the get came from the one, from the ones that witnessed the signature, puzzle. Why? Because then you have two for the signature, but you only have one for the writing, and that one is not a shliach. That one is not a messenger. So one is not enough. So Alma, that implies that Reb Yochanan here holds that even though you have two people who are bringing the get, you still need to say b'fanei nechta, which means that Reb Yochanan holds like Rabbah that the testimony is about lishma, because we said if the only thing was that because ein edem mitziyim l'kaima, that there's not witnesses available to certify the shtar, well, you have two witnesses because two people came, and once two people came, there's no need to have anybody else. Alma kasav shnayim sheviu get medina siyam, still tzrichen shiyam b'fanei nichta b'fanei nechta. Amalei Rabbi Yasi, so Rabbi Yasi says elameata Reisha, the first part of the Mishnah, diktani shnayim ayim b'fanei nichta, two say that in front of us it was written ve'echad ayim b'fanei nechta pasul. Rabbi Yehuda Machshir and the Rabbanan that say that it's puzzled, that means even if both of them, afilu get yotzim mitachas yedei shneim, even though the get comes from both of them, still puzzle Rabbanan. Because, as we said, Rabbi Yochanan will hold that even if two people bring the get, you still need to say correctly, b'fanei nechtam. Amalein, he said, you're right. However, now the Gemara does an about face. As we welcome in Marshall Castle, Michael, we have Bruce Eisenberg here with us. Really a very nice group over here. So we have a nice group of people and Marshall. Good to work, Marshall.
Thank you.
Good to work, Marshall. And Bruce, it's really nice to have you. It really is. It's Marshall notwithstanding, it's really nice to have you, Bruce. Bruce is working on coming here more than once a week. It just he has to work on it. I know, Bruce. I'm a patient man. You know me for a long time. I'm a patient man. Now the Gemara does its reversal. And the Gemara says, Zimna nashkechei di Yosef v'kamer. One time they found him, and he said, Dafilu get, where we said that one says b'fanei nichtav and two say b'fanei nechtam. Afilu get yotzim mitachas yedei dechasima. Even if the get comes from the witnesses that signed it, so now you don't have a shliach that says b'fanei nichtav. Only a lone individual kosher. Why? Because now Ravasi is saying, like the camp, that as long as two people bring the get from overseas and they stay here, so then there's no need to say b'fanei nechtam at all, because the whole problem is we're afraid that if the husband comes and says it's a forgery, there'll be nobody to prove. Nobody around that will recognize the signatures, and now we have these two people that are staying, so it's not a problem, and that's what the Gemara says. Now at this point, Rabasi is moving over to the camp. Alma kasab shnayim sheviu get midin sayam. If two people bring the get, ain't tzrichen sheyam b'fanei nechta b'fanei nechta. Amalei Ravasi, so Amalei Ravasi, so Ravasi said, Elam Ata Reisha Diktani, Shnayim Aimer B'faneinu Nichtam, Ve'echad Aimer B'fanei Nechtam, that if two people say B'fanei Nechtam and one person says B'fanei Nechtam, the Rabbanan say it's possible, Rabbi Yehuda Machshir, but that's only if the two people aren't Shluchim. Time a day and I get They're not Shluchim, so we can't be sure that they know what was going on with the get. But if the get is coming, yes?
Oh, hi. This is Linda at the gatehouse. Can I let in Moshe Jackson?
Yes, let him in all the time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
But if the get is coming from both of them, then even Rabbanan would be machshir. Even the Rabbanan would approve it. Amalayin, yes, that's so. So he says, wait a second, but earlier you said that even if the get comes from two people, it's not good because you also have to ratify that it was written lishma. Says the Gemara, v'azimnu lo yamar lan hachi. So he says, no, this second way is the reliable report. I've arrived at this maskana, that as long as you have two people bringing the get, then there's really no need to say b'fanei nechtam. They're staying and they'll be available to authenticate the get. Amalei, yes it he. This should be a peg that you should fix. Shaloi tamat, that it shouldn't budge. And this is the halacha. Now, we know that a get has to have a date. The question is, what's so important about the date? So, there's two schools of thought, Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan says a date is necessary, that the husband shouldn't use a get as a way to save his wife from execution. It's especially so in those days they would marry their niece. So even if he's angry at his wife for adultery, but since it's his sister's daughter, he has compassion on his sister and he doesn't want to see her executed. So he could hand her a get, and if it doesn't have a date, she could say that she got the get before she committed adultery, so that she was already not a married woman. So in order that you shouldn't falsely save a person from execution, that's why they instituted a date on a get. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish says there's a business reason. The business reason is that a husband has the right to sell the produce of his wife's nichsei maluk. He could benefit. Now, if she sues that he's selling stuff of hers after she's already divorced, and he has no right to do that, the only way that it could be proved is if the get has a date. Get has a date. Because if the get has a date, then he could say, look, then she could say, look, it was divorced on this date, and you sold the produce after the divorce, so you had no right to do so. So Reish Lakish says that's the reason why a get has to have a date. Let's see the Mishnah inside. And we welcome in Philippe, who's joining us, Pesach Ziegelman, who's joining us, and Ben Zion Cohn, who's joining us. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to have so many. We have 31 Zoomers here tonight. 31 Zoomers. That's really amazing. It's Rabbi Kranz that came in. Thank you very much. Thank you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shakol niyeh b'dvaro. Okay, that's fine. This is good. Thank you. I don't want nothing. So now let's learn the Mishnah inside. Those that are just joining us, the first wide line on the bottom of Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. Nichta b'yayim v'nechta b'yayim. Of course, if a get was written in the day and signed the same day, or b'layla v'nechta b'layla in the night and signed that same night, or even b'layla v'nechta b'yayim in the night and signed the next day, because since in Yiddishkeit the day follows the night, it's the same day. Kosher. B'yayim v'nechta b'layla, but if it was written in the day and signed in the night, so it was written in the day, that means it's a predated get. because the get goes according to when it is signed, and it's signed the next night, which is the next day. So that's a predated get. So b'yom v'nechta malayla puzzle. Reb Shimon machshir. Reb Shimon holds. We're going to see in the Gemara that Reb Shimon doesn't hold of the reason of Reb Yochanan, that it's for purposes of execution, and if it's for purposes of collection of the peiros, he holds that as soon as the husband intends to divorce her, which is when the get is written, he already loses the right to take her peiros, and therefore the date on the day that the get is written, even though it wasn't signed yet, that's a good enough date. So Reb Shimon machshir, Reb Shimon Aimer kol hagittin shenichtavu b'yom v'nechtam alayla. Any document that is written in the day and signed in the night is psulin, right? Because normally, if you have a document, so let's say Dr. Block has a document, from the date of the document, he has a right to collect even for mortgage properties if he had a previous lien. So it's important to know when the lien is binding. Now, if it was written in the day and signed in the night, it's really binding only from the time of the signature. So as a debt that gives him too early of a lien, so that's possible. Chutz megitei nashim, except for a get of nashim, because as we explained, according to Reb Shimon, he holds that he holds that the husband loses his right to collect from her property and sell her property as soon as he is nosan einov ligarsha, as soon as he intends to divorce her. That's at the writing of the get, even though it wasn't signed yet. So the date is accurate. So now the Gemara is going to explain the reasoning that we just talked about. Why did they enact a date on get? Rabbi Yochanan says, because the husband might want to cover up for his wife, who is his niece, his wife, who committed adultery. Normally, the husband might not feel fond enough to play any stuff, but it's also his sister's daughter. So therefore, if there's no get, there's no date on the get, he might give her a get and allow her to claim that she was divorced before she slept with the man, thereby saving herself. So therefore, we insist on a get for accuracy, a date for accuracy. Reish Lakish Amabishim Peiros. Reish Lakish says the other reason that I told you, and that is because the husband can take and sell his wife's produce from her karka, and the date on the get is a way that she could sue him that you sold produce after this date that you had no right to do so. Now the Gemara says, as we welcome in Moshe Jacqueline, the Gemara says, Reish Lakish my time aloy amak Rabbi Yochanan. Why doesn't Reish Lakish say the reason of Rabbi Yochanan to cover that she shouldn't be able to be spared from execution? Amalach, so he says to enact a date for that reason we wouldn't do, because that's very unlikely. Yidden are faithful and they practice fidelity. Snus lo shchicha. They weren't instituted just for snus. Rabbi Yochanan, my time aloy amak Reish Lakish. Why doesn't Rabbi Yochanan say the reason of Reish Lakish? Because Kasavar, he holds yesh lebal peiros ad shas nesina. He holds that the date on the get is not anyway authoritative, because even after the get is written, the husband still has a right to collect the peiros from his wife's property until it's delivered. And therefore, the date would not prove the date would not prove anything if she wants to sue for his illegitimate sale of her peiros. She would just bring the witnesses to the delivery of the get, and that's the way she would sue.
Isn't there a problem with Rabbi Yochanan as well? I mean, maybe he held on to the get, and then she was mizana.
The Gemara is going to talk about that. The Gemara is going to talk about that. So. Bishleim l'Reish Lakish, it's good according to Reish Lakish. Mishum hachi kamachshir Reb Shimon. According to Reish Lakish, that the reason of the get is because of Paris. That's why Reb Shimon says that a predated get is okay, because he holds that the husband loses the right to the Paris not when they're divorced, but when he's nosan einov legarsha, when he intends to divorce her. So anyway, even if the get is predated, it shows when he intended to divorce her, and that's accurate enough to sue for the Paris. El Reb Yochanan, but according to Reb Yochanan, my time with Reb Shimon the Machshir. Why would Reb Shimon hold that if it's predated, it's good? If he could predate again, he could save her life. Amalach Reb Yochanan, so Reb Yochanan says, I'm not explaining according to Reb Shimon. Obviously, Reb Shimon doesn't hold of my reason. I'm only explaining according to the Rabbanan. Amalach Reb Yochanan, Reb Shimon like Kamina. Reb Shimon definitely learns the reason of Paris. Ki Kamina libed Rabbanan. So Bishleim el Reb Yochanan, according to Reb Yochanan, Hainu diika bein Reb Shimon Rabbanan. That's the dispute between Reb Shimon and Rabbanan. In other words, Reb Shimon says the reason is because of Paris, and he holds that the Paris, he loses the right for his Paris as soon as he decides to divorce her, even when the get is written. So therefore, the date, even it's predated, the date is accurate because that's when he thinks to divorce her. While the Rabbanan hold, no, it's in order to cover up, to save her life, and that would be a problem if it's predated. El Reish Lakish, according to Reish Lakish, my ika bein Reb Shimon Rabbanan. What's the dispute between Reb Shimon and Rabbanan? And here the Gemara says, very simply, the Gemara says that the difference between Reb Shimon and Rabbanan is simple, because the Rabbanan hold that the only time the husband loses the right of selling her her produce is only when he actually divorces her, and therefore, if the get has a earlier date, that deprives the husband of a certain amount of time of selling her produce. While according to Reb Shimon, the husband's right is only from the time that he writes it, and therefore it's not a problem if it's predated. And that's what the Gemara says. The difference between them is the fruit from the time of the writing until the time of the signing of the get and the delivery, that according to Reb Shimon, he already loses the right as soon as the get was dated, because as soon as the get is written, it's not an ain of legarsha, and he decides, and he loses the right to sell her produce. While according to Rabbanan, he only loses the right to sell her produce at the time of delivery. Says the Gemara, but we learned that Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish hold just the opposite. The Itmar may must say in the Paris. From what time do we say that the wife could demand the Paris back? In other words, when do we say that the wife could repossess the husband if he took Paris from her property? Rabbi Yochanan says from the time he writes it, while Reish Lakish from the time it was given. Now, we just said just the opposite. We said, according to Rabbi Yochanan, it's from the time of the delivery, while according to Reish Lakish, it's from the time of the writing it. So the Gemara says, Eipach. You're right. We have to switch it around. Now, asks the Gemara, remember we said that one of the three gittin that are puzzle midrabanan, no, it's biblically they're good, they're puzzle midrabanan, but if they get married, then the child is not a mamzer. In other words, b'di'evid, it's a good get. So it says in Gemara, Amli Abayil Rabbi Yosef, Gimel Gittin, Psulin. There were three Gittin that are puzzle midrabanan, but the imnesis, if she gets married with the get, b'di'evid, it's good, and the child from the second marriage is not a mamzer, havlat kasher. One of those Gittin is a get without a date. Now, if b'di'evet it's good without a date, then maho'ilu chachamim b'takanasan. What did the chachamim help? What does it help? He'll still be able to write the get, and without a date, and then give it to his wife, and she could cover up from the adultery. Or there could be a get without a date, and then the husband could take the payers even after they got divorced, and she won't be able to sue. So what did the Chachamim help? Says the Chachamim helped a lot. Because since this get is no good, they're not going to be able to find a cipher to write the get and aid him to sign it if it doesn't have a date. Ahanu de lechatchila loitinase. She won't be able to have such a get and get married again, because no cipher is going to write such a get, and no Adam are going to sign the get without the date. Says the Gemara, yeah. The Gemara says, you're right. He'll get a cipher, they'll write a date, and then he'll carefully tear off the date. And we said it's good without a date. Says the Gemara, Gaziel is Mandi Day. If you're telling me that b'di'evet it's good, he'll cut off the date, v'yovei and give it to her without a date. So Gaziel is Mandi Day, v'yovei nihala mai. So here the Gemara says an interesting thing. Amalei l'ramai lo yichayshina. We're not going to suspect a trickster. Now you'll say, to save his niece, maybe he'll be a trickster. So what the Gemara is answering now is that if he could do it legally, he'll do it. But if he can't do it legally, and then to be caught that he did such skullduggery in order to save, right, Marshall? Skullduggery. What happened to Marshall?
I don't recognize that word.
The RG.
Huh?
Skullduggery. Skullduggery.
Skullduggery. I was just checking if you were awake, Bruce. So if to
Better language than that. Sorry.
to Marshall just practices it. He doesn't know how to pronounce it.
Listen, doctors are still practicing. I'm a pro.
So anyway, to result to such skullduggery, he won't result. Says the Gemara, well, listen to this halacha. Kasev by Shvua Shana Chodesh Shabbos Mai. Let's say the get doesn't have a precise date on Yud Ches Sivan, Tavshim Pei Gimel. It just says it's in the Shemitah had 7 different 7-year spans. So if the get just said it's in the 3rd 7-year series of the Shemitah, or Shana, it says it's in this year of the Shemitah, or Chodesh, it says it's in the month of Adar, Shabbos, the week of Bahalaischa, Mai. What would be a get that has such imprecise dating? Amalei kosher. So the Gemara says kosher. So then what does it help? She could commit adultery in one part of the Shvius of the 3rd series of the Shemitah cycle, the 3rd 7-year period, and she it just says that it was in the third period, the third series of 7 years. Says the Gemara, well, ahanu l'shvua de kamei. It helps that if it says the 3rd series and she committed adultery in the 4th, it says in the 3rd series and she committed adultery in the 2nd series, she'll be executed. It'll help for that. It'll help a little bit. And l'shvua de basrei. And if the husband seizes produce in the fourth period, he's going to have to return it. And you'll say, but it leaves a gaping hole that it doesn't cover. So the Gemara says, well, anyway, even if you say the exact day, you don't cover anything either. If it says the date, maybe she got divorced in the morning, maybe she got divorced in the afternoon and committed adultery in the morning, and she's going to produce the get and say she got divorced earlier that day. So it doesn't preclude that. It helps the day before and the day after. Hachanami, it's taka imprecise, but it helps at least a little bit. It helps for the next period and it helps for the last period.
7 years? Even since we're talking about 7-year gap.
Right. And hachanami. I know it is what to be incredulous about, but it says at least it helps us something. One second. So we're going to pause here for a moment.